Thanks, Jerome. He's a real class act, Jerome. That's just the Christmas card that he appeared on. So, for those of you that don't know me, and you probably won't because of the biography that I supposedly didn't give to Jerome, I'm the technology manager at Network Research. We've moved to Askia, I'd say about just over 3 years ago. I think it's fair to say that it's been an exciting and interesting 3 years. I think Askia would agree with that. And there's no doubt when we moved to Askia, Perestroika and Glasnost were two reasons high up on the agenda for moving to Askia. Now, if you're not Russian like myself, then Perestroika is about restructuring and Glasnost is about being open and transparent about what you do. And so through Askia, we've clearly been able to do that. And hopefully over the next 10 minutes or so, I'll show you an example of a project which we've been working on significantly over the last year or so. So as Tim has shown us with his presentation, we've been able to quite extensively build on top of Askia, and that's one of the key reasons why we moved to Askia in the first place. And what I wanted to focus on today was how we've been able to, as we see it, revolutionize quality control in our field operations. And so I'm just going to set the scene a little and talk about an opportunity that we saw with a product called Voice Manager, and tell you a little about what Voice Manager is, what it does, and how we've been able to benefit from it as a company, and then talk a little bit about our experiences and the things we've learned from it, and perhaps if you're looking to build something similar in the future, there could be some pointers in there. When we moved to Askia, one of the biggest benefits that we got was, for the first time, we had a predictive dialer that allowed us to record calls in an automated way. Calls were stored in a central database and were crisply recorded. Now, we've never had that before, and because the mechanism proved to be flexible and robust, we decided we wanted to record every single call that we made. Which I turned around to and said, great, how are we going to manage this? Because we're talking about, as Tim said, 70,000 interviews a month. That's anything upwards of 7 million recordings a year. And so we set about planning for this straight away. There are some challenges that we really needed to address. How were we going to store all these recordings? How were we going to catalogue them? How were we going to find them? And how long did we want to keep them for? So what we did was we built an extensive recording infrastructure. We, at the heart of it, put in place a large storage area network, as you would do with so much data passing through it. And then we built a set of processes to compress WAV files to MP3s, we moved files into project folders, and we had deletion processes and overnight maintenance things that go on. And ultimately what we arrived at was an end-to-end system to manage our recordings, and we're now in a position to host and store upwards of 7 million recordings at any given time, no problem. What we did next then was to present an interface to our operational staff, and we call that Call Finder. And we whacked this onto our intranet, and this enabled our supervisors and our field staff, or any operational staff that needed to use it, easy access to these recordings. And as you can see, there's a range of filters that they can apply. They can simply search on telephone number, by individual survey, date calls were made on, and this proved to be really successful internally, and people caught onto it very quickly. And so this was the first example of product built on top of our recording infrastructure. So we thought, great, let's try another one. And so the next thing we did was build something called the verbatim transcribe. And what this is anytime an interview is finished in field, we're able to transcribe that as close to real time as we can. As soon as someone's finished an interview, we have our data prep department where an interview can immediately be transcribed based on that audio file that's been generated in field. For us as a customer satisfaction company, in surveys where we're dealing with things like complaints or problems, this is really useful because as soon as someone's made a complaint or identified a problem, that's immediately transcribed and passed on to a client. And previously the old process that could have taken anything up to 48 hours, and so we've radically reduced that time just by implementing this. And so these were two real successes we had built on top of our recording architecture. And then we saw an opportunity. Because Call Finder and the verbatim transcribe were such huge internal successes, our clients begin to hear about a few of these things, and they became, as we proved our capability to produce recordings in a consistent and continual manner, they became very hungry for getting their hands on recordings for simple things like validating scores or carrying out retrospective listening in sessions. And we thought, great, we should really start treating these recordings as assets. And we made the realization that the better quality that these assets possess, the more value they are to us and obviously to our clients. And so this is where the idea behind Voice Manager came from. So what's Voice Manager? Voice Manager is a dedicated call quality improvement system that enables us to maintain the highest quality of interviewing. Builds up a profile of interviewers' quality performance as they work through as interviewers at network research. As I said, it builds up a profile of their quality performance, and it gives us intelligence that allows us to identify any problems proactively. In fact, if they're continually making the same mistakes, the interviewers, or they're not up to quality standards, it's quickly flagged up in the system. And Voice Manager provides the means to do this. We're going to talk a little bit about its features on the next slide. But Voice Manager also provides an interaction with the interviewer, because every call that is listened into them through the system is actually fed back to them. There's a feedback module which they're heavily involved in, and so it's very much a two-way system for field and field management and interviewers themselves. So some of the features that Voice Manager has are on screen, and obviously plays back recordings to supervisors so that they can listen to them. But at the heart of Voice Manager really is a really rich and flexible mechanism to listen to interviewer calls in a variety of ways. So you could just simply listen to a random selection of calls for a project. We call that standard mode. Then there's other modes like let's listen to calls from yesterday, or calls on a specific date. Or as Tim said, we have 4 call centers, and so if we wanted to listen to calls from a specific center, we could do that. We could listen to calls from a specific set of agents. We've even got modes in there like listening to calls from the most productive interviewers or the least productive interviewers. We might want to focus on them. As you can see on screen, there's a multitude of rating criteria which they're marked against. If they so much as breathe in the wrong way, it's flagged up incorrectly. There's a large display on the right-hand side that presents exactly what they've coded in any open questions or of the like. And so it's not just about what's been said; it's about what's actually been input as well. And so it's a complete quality management tool. As I said earlier, the second part of it is the feedback module. The feedback module allows the call center manager or the supervisor to browse through all the calls they've actually rated, and then start some dialogue up with the actual interviewer. So they might say, okay, they've rated a call here and the interviewer's turned up for his next shift, or he might actually be in his shift and he might be making a whole load of mistakes, and so they might be pulled out of shift and said, they might come over and say, you see, I've just been monitoring one of your calls here, and this is what we found. And I think in this case, this particular case they've found 2 faults with this call, and it's quite detailed, the level of input that goes into the system, and we've broken down our quality monitoring, as I said, into a variety of areas, and it's very easy to know if interviewers are consistently falling down in the same area, and so it's very much caters for that. It also is built with security in mind. Obviously, we're going to talk a bit about benefits in a second, but compliance is clearly one of those reasons, and so the feedback module makes sure that this is legitimate feedback that's been given to interviewers, and interviewers are formally acknowledging that they have received this feedback, and there's an authentication mechanism built into the software as well. So that's Voice Manager in a nutshell. How have we benefited from this as a company? Well, first thing I can say is that we've made massive savings. It actually surprised us how much savings we've generated, because the old process of quality assurance in field was very much paper-based, and lots of filing cabinets were involved in the process. We've saved 40% by implementing this system, and I would say, if anything, that's an underestimate, especially when it comes to auditing times. The amount you save there is infinitely increased then. So definitely cost savings. Compliance, as I said, we're bound to the ISO 20052 standard. If I get that right. And because of that, the paper process that we've replaced was an absolute nightmare to administer. But with this, it's an absolute doddle. And in fact, when we recently got ISO inspected, the ISO inspector couldn't believe how far we'd come with such a system. He'd never seen one like this in the industry, and so he gave us a glowing report because of this, and so we were quite happy about that. And so were the centre managers, by the way. He'd spent hours and hours previously shifting through all this paper. Now, this is very much a key benefit of the system, the ability for us to increase the effectiveness of agent training. What our agents have said since we've introduced the system is that they actually take the quality aspect of what they do far more seriously now, because whereas before there was papers involved and things like that, they now know there's an end-to-end system which they're given formal feedback on, and then they say that it's far more professional, and they actually feel good about it as well, in that they genuinely want to do better when they see themselves falling down. And so the effectiveness of training and the ability for us to provide coaching to them, we've definitely upped our game there as well. I'd say Voice Manager also offers benefits beyond just performance management and compliance. I think one of the additional benefits that's provided us with is we've been able to identify, because it provides information on call trends, we've been able to identify problems with scripts and questionnaires before they've got really out of hand. And if there's a problem with a particular quota, again, that will come through in Voice Manager the more calls you listen to. The other thing is, we've implemented Voice Manager, but the work for us has just started because we've put this in place. It gives us so many additional other opportunities. We saw Tim there with our fleet field planning tools. What we're starting to do now is link in the quality aspect and prioritize shift bookings and give our shifts or our best shift to our best performing interviewers. And so we're very much able to do that by feeding in the outputs from this system into that. So this is clearly where we're heading now. So that's some of the benefits of Voice Manager. And I sort of wanted to just finish with stuff we've learned over the last 3 years as we've implemented it. I think the first thing is that clearly don't want to implement the system to make it seem like a big brother world. I think interviewers need to be encouraged that the recording is there for their own benefit, and it's there to increase the level and standard of what they're doing and how they're performing. And so long as they understand that, they'll be really happy with the system. But if it just, you've got it there to something to hit them with as a stick, then they don't respond to that very well. So I think you have to create that environment where it's a two-way system, as I said. Second thing I'd say is you have to implement it as an overall change program. It's no good implementing it simply for compliance, because you won't get the return on investment as quickly as you would if it wasn't as part of an overall change program, which is how we've done it. And finally, this is something we've clearly done, and we've given interviewers access to the system. It's very easy to build a tool like this and just say, right, it's for management or it's for call center staff. We're going to look into your calls, we're going to rate them, and then we're going to fire you. But which we do sometimes. But it's the best of both worlds, because if interviewers actually see where they're going correct as well, they'll use that to their advantage in other surveys. And so we're very serious about the coaching and training element of it. And it's not just about a system for firing people. All right. So just to summarize, at Network Research, through Perestroika, Russian's getting a lot better, Jerome. Network Research has built an extensive recording architecture, and we've capitalized on that further by building a series of applications: Call Finder, Verbatim Transcribe, and Voice Manager, obviously. And we've arrived at a Glasnost mentality where, as I said, Jerome said, we like to be transparent about the way we do things, and we share information with our interviewers, our internal staff, and even our clients. And so we like being Glasnost. As I said, through Voice Manager, we're very proud of what we've achieved with that, and we've had some outstanding success. But we're now working on our next generation of products, as I alluded to earlier, because we never stay still, and I never get a day off. So thanks for listening. Just a final thank you that I wanted to say to Askia. As I said at the start, it's been an interesting 3 years and couldn't have done it without you guys. So thank you, Jerome. Thank you, Patrick. But also a big thanks to the support staff who don't always get a mention. Jack, you're here somewhere. Thanks for your hard work. And a lovely Jane.